Well, that was incredible, Patrick. Love to see motion come to life, physically and on the canvas. My name is Tammy, and I'm a product designer at Figma, and I'm so happy to be here at Config with you. We've been thinking a lot about what it feels like to build right now in this moment. In this time, tools are changing, the way that we're working is changing, and at speeds that are frankly hard to keep up with sometimes. And I'm excited to introduce to you a panel of practitioners, doers just like you, who will dig into all of that. We're joined by Tommy Gioco, who runs UX tools and internet enjoyers. Nobody has a better read on how designers are thinking and feeling right now. Matt D. Smith, aka MDS, founder of Shift Nudge, where he trained thousands of designers to develop visual judgment. Kat Small, staff product designer at Dropbox, who started coding at the age of 10 and then designing at 15 and has been shipping work ever since. And Rasmus Anderson, former designer at Figma and Spotify, engineer at early Facebook, and someone obsessed with simplicity. So please welcome to the stage Tommy, MDS, Kat, and Rasmus.
Let's go.
Hi.
This is fantastic. I have had a lot of fun today hearing what the Figma team has been up to. And before we get into this conversation, which I'm really excited to have, I want everyone in this room to check in with yourselves, because we have a lot of things to consider today, a lot of ways to work. The thing that Figma has told us was that 72% of us in this room are using generative AI, or have at least tried it this year. Our UX Tools survey this year showed that it's neatly split into thirds, that a third of us haven't actually even touched it. A third of us have dabbled a little bit, and the other third of us are fundamentally changing how we work. How are you feeling about that today? Which lane do you sit in? And how does that make you feel? Are you excited like me? I'm stoked. Are you anxious? A little skeptical maybe? Maybe you're relieved? I want you to think about that over the next 40 minutes as we talk about what we've experienced of what it's like to build in 2026. And to do that, I am so excited to start this off by asking you, Rasmus, the creator of Enter, the most useful typefaces in software. Thank you for that. Woo! Yes, give it up. Helped shape the early days of Figma, now creating creative tools at Playbit. You have seen this whole stack before AI kind of came into the equation now. So to start this off, has AI changed the practice of design, or is it merely changing the production layer around it?
Yeah, definitely of the sort of the old segment of people, right? The before days. Yeah, I've seen the before days, and it was rough, man. No, it was great. I think what's happening now is absolutely changing the way we're doing things, right? I guess what's not clear to me, and I haven't heard anyone who has like a, excuse me, a clear perspective on this, is how it's changing it, right? Is it all for the better? Is it all for the worse, right? Yeah, let's talk about that. I think, I hope that we all walk away, the four of us, all of you, that we walk away from this with like some new little seeds in our minds of questions that we need to ask ourselves about this. Yeah, so let's get going.
Absolutely. Well, and what's really interesting, Matt, you have trained thousands of designers, some of our favorite people in this room even. And with production kind of going through some changes in design and a lot of us asking these kinds of existential questions, are you finding that the fundamentals of design, and it sounds like it would be an obvious answer to this question, but I really want you to think about this, do they matter more now Or do they actually matter less?
It's in my best interest for them to matter more. And as unbiased as I could truly try to muster, I think everything matters more from the fundamental level, because I feel like all of the new tools that we're using, it's just amplifying everything and it's multiplying everything. Every bad decision, every good decision, and all of the existing resources that we're using for our designs or our products, it's just exponentially ramping up. And the things that you can do and the opportunities that we all have, it's a multiplying force. And I think if you're going to have that multiplication, you have to have a solid foundation to multiply against, so the end result is really good.
Now, the thing that I am guilty of is I have a small team, I have a great network of people who are solo builders, and you hear all the hype, all the people who don't have a lot of people to answer to. We're not fighting the stakeholders fights to really sell the decisions that matter to us. It's easy for people like me to say, hey, this is wonderful, this is great, and it's changing everything. But Kat, I want to know from you at Dropbox scale, is this real? Or is this still kind of feeling like a demo stage?
That's real. So I would say that at the scale that I work at, just for context, Dropbox is almost 20 years old, and we've got thousands of folks that work across the product to deliver awesome services to folks. And I think we see a lot of potential and a lot of promise, and this is a time and space where we're figuring out where does AI multiply in a good way, and where does it potentially constrain us to the point where we go too fast in a direction that maybe hasn't been shown to be the direction that will be most beneficial for our customers. And I think we've done a lot of great work internally to figure out a lot of that already, and I'm definitely building more of an understanding for my own work and my own thought process where I find it helpful. So I find that it's been really helpful for things like synthesis, kind of like looking through large data sets, for example, and figuring out maybe some of the signals that I need to dig into further. It's been really valuable for that, especially when you've got 20 years worth of context. Sometimes there might be research that was done a while ago that actually might still be worth looking at, and I might not know the right phrasing to use to find it. And so it can be helpful to actually ask, like, hey, like, were there other people who have already done this before? You know, maybe over time, like, certain coworkers have gone on to work at other places and they would have had that historical context. So there can be a lot of value in the tooling for purposes like that early on in the work. I find that for me, a lot of the benefit tends to be closer to production. So the closer that you get to delivering the solution, I find a lot more value. But I, most of the time, want to be more hands-on earlier in the work, which I think is very true of a person who is maybe more in like the creative direction world as well. Like when you're in the visioning stage, you really care about making sure that you're clear about where you're trying to go. But then once you've kind of figured out the big meaty problems, okay, cool, like I'm ready to kind of let go of control a little bit. And I think that's where it can be really amazing.
Do you find yourself protecting any part of this process now that more folks are getting involved? There's a lot of eagerness to bring ideas to life. Where do you stand on those sorts of collaborations?
I definitely think that there will always be space for pulling in ideas from everybody early on. So that is one thing I, of course, also want to call out. Like the design process at a large company is always going to involve a variety of stakeholders and making sure that you're gathering different ideas from different places. But then usually the responsibility of the designer is to have their own perspective as well and to strengthen that over time, and then to figure out how to appropriately, push that idea through the different layers that are necessary and to convince everybody. And I think like what I'm figuring out is, or at least where I've landed, is that I want to own a lot of the early thinking, because that is necessary to build that foundation that Matt was talking about earlier. I found that in my own experiments, if I integrate some of the tooling a little bit too early to kind of like throw out ideas for me, then it's kind of like when somebody else, maybe if you've ever gone on vacation and somebody's done design work while you're away and you come back and you're like, well, I don't really know how to explain this because I wasn't there. Like I need to be present and really deeply involved in that and, throwing things out, seeing what sticks. And then when I feel like I've got that foundation, I'm ready to hand it off.
Perhaps this is something that goes to what we were talking about earlier very briefly, which is like, what is changing and maybe what is not changing? Intention behind the sign, right? Maybe that's something that is not changing, or rather something that is not as affected by the new tools that we have right now.
There's a lot to unpack with that too. And specifically, I really want to get into, and we will in just a moment, how to communicate with our cross-functional partners and stakeholders about, hey, this is a decision that we kind of came to using some generative AI, but I didn't have my hands involved in the whole process. We'll get to that, but Matt, first I want to ask you, with everything that you've been teaching, specifically designers how to see, how to make these interface decisions, now what do you see is becoming, is it changed at all? But do you see that anything changing around what's worth learning more of? Is it the making? Is it about judgment? Is it about storytelling decisions? What are you saying?
It's really interesting because I only know what I've done in the past. I spent all my time in Photoshop and Flash and then Illustrator and then Sketch, and I've got all these manual reps in. So I'm like, there's one part of me that's like, you have to move things around to learn how to design, but that's coming from a place of, that's how I did it. That's not necessarily the fundamental truth, it's just the truth for me. And so I do think that you can absolutely learn design by manually moving things around and going through the same process that I went through. But I think it would be naive of me to think that you can't incorporate a new material, a new learning material, and it's generated and okay, now we're curating the generation. And why are we curating it this way? And why does the typography feel off? And maybe it is not as much manual moving around. Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, it really just depends. And I think it's tough to say because we're still, who can confidently say anything about AI or building or design other than like, things are moving really fast. And I don't know the answer to everything. So it's like I have my ideas and my hunches, but I'm just not sure, that good split of drawing a rectangle by hand and making sure it snaps to just the right spot versus prompting it. I think either way, you're going to need to know whether or not that rectangle needs to exist. And whether you did it manually or you generated it, that's still a skill you're going to have in your brain, not in a Markdown file.
Kat, are you seeing?
Give it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's go.
I'll do that one. Yeah.
Don't hold back applause. Let's go.
We love it.
Make us feel comfortable up here.
Thank you.
But Kat, and kind of piggybacking off of that and back to what you were talking about, how much have you seen this function of storytelling? I love telling good stories, but there's a way to do this with the people we have to convince. It's a lot easier to do that when we have data, when we've gone through the week with our hands in the clay, but now we've got so many options available to us. How have you seen the role of storytelling and selling your decisions evolve in your job?
I think it's more important in some ways because when you can produce things really fast, why we're going in a certain direction is the most critical thing. And you do, of course, want to have, you don't always need to know exactly what's going to happen after you roll something out. You want to have an idea of why you're building something, why you're going with that version versus the other many iterations or other directions we could go in. I think at a large company, there are always just going to be bigger repercussions. I think when you're at a smaller company, you're maybe doing a 0 to 1 project, you have a hypothesis, you ideally, validate it or check it in some way that maybe there's a there somewhere in there. And you maybe have less people that you have to get bought into that work. When you are at a larger company with a lot of historical context, storytelling matters a lot more because there is a lot more at stake. And I think that also everybody will have a little bit of a different picture of where they think the company might go, or the product might go, who the customers are, things of that nature. And so what I'm trying to do as a designer is explain, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is who it's for, so that we all have the same language and we can all move in the same direction. Because when we have all of these tools that make it possible to produce so quickly, people over here might be going in one direction versus over here shipping a completely opposite thing. And that happens at a lot of different places, and so for me, it's actually been more critical. Like, communication has gotten more and more important over time. And I actually assert to a lot of the designers that I work with that critical thinking, communication in general, working across people, making sure that you're communicating proactively with each other.
You mean we still have to use our brains?
We still have to use our brains? It's wild. It's more important, because people can be in their own silos. I think Tammy mentioned something about that earlier at one of the demos. Like, you can be in your own little silo, just kind of like shipping a PR like real quick. But because of that, we have to fight that hunger or that tendency to kind of go in our little corner, and we actually need to make sure that we're reaching out more to each other.
Is there ever a time, and bear with me on this one, where shutting the brain off for a moment, and you think of it from like diverging and converging, right? And you think about the crazy eights that we create, we get through some really rough ideas, and maybe one of them doesn't suck, and it opens up a new thread for us to explore. And I've experienced that personally before AI, and I've experienced that certainly with AI. And I want to know from you, is there ever a time that you think it is worth diverging and converging back with just, hey, generate some stuff and let me see what we have?
Maybe if it's like error states or something. Yeah, I'm down. I'm like,
small,
I don't want to
surface.
touch that,
Very
I don't
short
need to.
leash.
Yeah, the smallest of leashes possible. Or like a form, like a really simple form. I'm like, bro, have fun. Like, I don't want to think about that. Like, we have maximized, well, there's always room for more and better, right? But I think with a lot of the work that we do, it's about figuring out, okay, is this the most efficient use of my time? Especially as a staff designer, like, it can be expensive to use my time figuring out like what is exactly the way that we should treat this error state for like we've just done this a lot. So I would rather be using that energy on really challenging, confusing, overwhelming, ambiguous problems that are frankly just like maybe for me frustrating to try to kick around with AI beyond like help me do some research. Yeah. Like, I love it for researching a problem early, but then like I usually honestly, sometimes I sketch by hand, which is like wild to say, I know. Sometimes I sketch by hand still. It's wild. Sometimes I still wireframe, it's weird. But like, I'm that person still. I like doing it. It actually, so like, I know we were just talking about like, oh, hey, like maybe prompting is gonna like be useful for some people to like learn design and stuff, but I actually still feel like the tactile is really important for me, at least. It's very similar to reading a book, in my opinion. Like, the more that you read like a physical book, it integrates more into your brain, I feel like, and that to me is really important. But again, I work at a certain altitude and scale where I feel like really strongly that I have to be doing that. But I think if you are in a different context, you can play in a different way, and it might be fine because you're moving really fast and you can't really break that much stuff.
Now, Rasmus, I've heard described as a software painter, which I think is brilliant, but Playbit is genuinely a very creative tool. And I want to know, based on what Kat was just saying, the fundamentals, the things that we kind of have worked with at a high volume, maybe don't need the same kind of attention. Whereas on some of the decisions that you're thinking about with Playbit, I imagine you're exploring this ambiguity that maybe you have to think through more intentionally. How do you treat, for lack of a better word, a mundane task versus something that's kind of brand new and ambiguous?
I mean, there's a lot to, excuse me, there's a lot to unpack, I think. A lot of interesting thoughts, but there, you're talking about error states, Kat, and what I'm thinking about is like all the possible permutations a program can kind of be in, There might be an infinite number, there might be a lot, right? That's part of the design process, I think. But what's not clear to me is like, where do we draw the line between like what is ideation phase and sort of what is production? To me, maybe it's like a spicy take. I hope it's a spicy take.
Oh.
That's like production, like take it away, like whatever, right? Sure. Sometimes it's nice to use an X-Acto knife and like write the handwritten note and all of that, right? That feels more like emotion and family and art than it feels like work and business to me. So when it comes to work and business, production, take it away. It's fine, right? That's, I think, error states and like design systems and putting UI together and making sign-in forms. That's production design. Figuring out that we need a sign-in form, that's like ideation.
Unless the error state is a big part of the app and it needs to be a custom experience and it needs some attention.
Error
like,
states.tld, yeah.
you never know, like,
That's true.
Ooh, like a status page,
sometimes you might need to, like maybe we don't have any error states and we make it so the form doesn't have error states. So I still think like production is important to just, I don't want to do any more work that needs to be done either, but it's like, sometimes if you stop for the error state, there might be some hidden gem, a thread to pull.
Yeah.
So just want a little counterbalance there, Rasmus,
Yeah, but I don't know. It's just like, there's a craft portion, which is, I think, obviously very important, right? That's what makes something different from something else, right? You pick your favorite kitchen utensil. And I think it was Naoto Fukasawa who said like good design is like the kitchen utensil you just like automatically pick up. It's the one you prefer because it's the one that makes you feel the best or whatever. So there's something to that, and I think craft plays a big role in that, right? So yeah, I can see your perspective, Matt, of like production might be a part where you infuse that craft or where you exercise it essentially. But I think production just generally in software is like, it's just software. Let's, automate it, please. Robots, come.
Well, and you've also said, Rasmus, that some of your best work has come when you had a strong conviction about the end. And some of your worst work, as you've put it, has come from when you've fallen in love with the artifact. And I want to know, now that we have an abundance of artifacts to kind of move between, how are you seeing conviction manifest itself? Can you train a designer to have conviction or to identify it, to recognize it, and to that end, can an AI help you figure out where your convictions lie?
I feel that that's more of a culture thing, to have conviction and to feel that there's value in having conviction, whatever that might mean in this context, right? To feel like a desire to like get somewhere or to make something happen, right? I think this is very important, and I bet that everyone here have that drive, and that's probably partly why you're here, that you care about something. And so, yeah, sure, AI tools can probably help you with that. I think what it absolutely can help us with, like very practically, is just like, hey, I got an idea, let's just try stuff out, right? That's fantastic. It's like, imagine you had 20 design students all eager to help out, right? What would you have them help you with if you could, right? That seems like,
So then would you say then the ability to produce more, while it does have its drawbacks, I think, also enables something like practicing, I guess what we might call micro conviction?
Well, I think that there's a tension today between do we focus on quality or do we focus on quantity, right? To simplify things, right? We're given this like box, this like, a strange box from the future, and we're like, whoa, it makes like magical things. We bonk it, whoa, it can think, And we're trying to figure out what this thing is. And to me, it seems like most people will say, ooh, I'm gonna make more, right? I'm gonna ship faster. And very few people are like saying, ooh, I'm gonna do what I'm doing much better. And as designers, I think we tend to end up on the ooh, I can do better, right? And so I think a great way of just like approaching design is that of like play and exploration. And that usually means like you do 1,000 iterations on something before you feel comfortable. You feel that conviction behind the idea that you have in front of you and where you want to go with it, right? And that has just historically, at least from my own experience, takes a lot of time. Sometimes it's really fun. Sometimes you get to exercise that sort of like, the practical building, the programming, the rectangle drawing, right? Sometimes it's fun, but sometimes it's tedious. 3 months later, you're like on iteration 900 and whatever, right?
Something that's really helped me in this kind of conviction is sometimes you have to pathfind your way through this. And I've actually found myself return to form with mood boarding. I actually kind of moved away from mood boarding, and then starting to get into film production, it became very useful again. And then suddenly I found myself, that's a new way that I can kind of pathfind some of my own ideas, my own convictions. I'm going to put you on the spot, Matt. How would you tell a designer to practice exploring their own convictions?
Oh, that's tough. Practice exploring your own convictions. Step number 1, have a conviction. Because some people don't.
That's true.
Some people don't have a conviction, and I think that is an interesting question for us all. Sometimes we just want to get something done, and other times we really feel attached to the work, and we have a vision, and we have a conviction. And I do think that the best designers and the best builders like have a strong point of view and have a conviction, and I don't know how to teach that. I could maybe try to draw it out of someone and ask, a lot of questions about why does this matter? Why do you want to do this? But I think just even developing that conviction first is probably more important than worrying about whether AI can do anything with it or not. Because again, it's a foundation.
It's a bit like motivation, conviction, and the way we're talking about now. Like, Kat, you do a lot of things, right? You're a very sort of creative person across things into video games, even and stuff like that. When you work with someone who is excited but doesn't have conviction, or like, is there a trick? What's the trick to make them excited and find that like drive for themselves?
Right. You have to find what gives them energy, or like what excites them in particular. I mean, I try when I work with designers, right? Yeah, like
here's your error state.
What do you like? Yeah, are you excited by? I think I would say when it comes to things like conviction, building opinions, firstly, there needs to be like the space for that to work. So like as we're talking about a lot of this and like the idea of like exploring and being able to build, I think at Dropbox, I'm really grateful that there is encouragement from like leadership to make sure that we are, not just running towards something without knowing if we're going in the direction that makes the most sense, because you need the space and time underscored, to like throw lots of things at the wall and see over time like which of these doesn't work. I think when we're thinking about interaction design, love AI for this because it's really helpful. You can like type descriptions, right? And say, well, I want to do this, and then maybe I want to have another version that does this, and then over time, you can play the 3 of them next to each other and be like, okay, that one's better, I think. And then you can be like, okay, hey, what do you all think? And I think it's through that process that people understand, okay, like it's safe for me to have the space to explore. And I think that safety over time creates that conviction or that perspective that like, okay, I can go in those different directions and figure out which one of these is truly the one that makes me feel confident that we're moving toward our goals. And then also, of course, as builders, we ideally have a goal in the first place. Like, why are we doing the work? Which is why I think, again, like it's not just about the production, it's about like making sure that we're defining the problem right. Like maybe the hottest take is, in my opinion, the double diamond is not dead. It's like we have a lot of tools that we can now apply to different places within them, but we still do have these different moments within the work that we're doing, and we can phrase them whatever we want. We can talk about frameworks in whatever way that we want to, but like we are still shifting, throughout the work that we're doing. Maybe it's flattening a little bit, but I still think that we're going to be exploring. With these challenging problems, we diverge, we converge, we figure out what we want to deliver, and then we figure out how to ship them. That doesn't change. I think that we have a really awesome instrument that helps us do a lot of those things better and faster, maybe.
This is a time when like you can figure out what you really care about, and you can just like make that happen. So I would do that, and not get bogged down in like technology.
I have conviction that more conversations like these should happen, are useful. I hope that this is useful to you. This is all the time we do have for this conversation, but Kat, Matt, Rasmus, thank you very much for having this with me. Thank you to all of you for joining the close of Config with us. I hope you have a great rest of the week on this. Go out there and build something that you're convinced needs to exist.
All right.
Cheers.
There it is.